So, continuing, how should AI generated content be assessed or credited in professional settings?
Um, like you mean someone is actually publishing something written by AI?
Yeah, I've heard cases of like scientific articles being published by AI, but that's an extreme case, just like maybe you're writing a report or something, or you post something on social media, just any place where you actually need to submit something that you used AI to help
Hmm.
create.
I mean, if it's like an academic report or a book or something like that, like I think it's hugely problematic if AI is used for a large portion of it. And like if it is, like it should be attributed in some way. Like it should be however you cite that, like that should be like disclosed, basically. But if it's like internal stuff, like emails or you're writing up like an internal report or something, I think it's important to have like the literacy of like, not just spitting out garbage and sending it internally, but like actually reviewing it and making sure it's like useful. I think that's like, you know, I don't think you necessarily need to disclose it if you're using like ChatGPT to like review your grammar or something like that.
Yeah. And what are your thoughts on intellectual property rights of an AI generated work?
Um, I think there's like some nuance there. Like, I mean, the challenge is like these models were trained on a lot of copyrighted work, whether it's copyrighted text or copyrighted images. I think we're starting to see some of these things um, where they are actually trying to figure out how to license and pay people for the content and um, not use copyrighted content. Like Adobe's Firefly is based on Adobe's like stock image licensed like images. So you know that like those artists in some way are being like compensated that have contributed to those models. And then on the other hand, there's like the guardrails that like Adobe Firefly will not generate like a Disney character for you or, an artwork in the style of like a living artist. So like I think you need both sides of that. I think it's a little more complicated for the large language models. Like you see OpenAI and Anthropic and Google like starting to create these content licensing agreements with like the New York Times and Wall Street Journal. You see the New York Times actually suing OpenAI because they didn't like the terms of that. Um, I think it's going to be some time before that's resolved. But like so you have the training data problem and attribution and paying, that's part of the problem. And then on the other side, like what is able to be generated, like that needs to have guardrails. Like you shouldn't be able to generate things in the style of someone else and like take credit for it and things like that.
Yeah, it's just a huge problem in academic
Yes.
as well.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, you know, yeah, anything that like looks like it's copying someone else and what it produces is a problem. And then if it's built on other people's stuff, like you have to be careful with that too.
Yeah, and adding on to that, what are some ethical considerations that are important when you're using generative AI in a professional context?
Um, I mean, I think, the ethical considerations aren't so much of like me like using chat GPT to write an email. Like I don't think there's like
Yeah.
ethical problems there per se. The ethical problems come when you build systems and you build products that use generative AI. I mean, you know, Google Gemini has like some great examples of that. Like maybe you saw in the news, like there's like the Google like search generative experience or like AI overviews, they called it, where someone asked like, how many rocks a day should I eat? And it said, eat one small, the doctors say, or the geologists say, please eat one small rock per day. Or someone asks, how do I get this pizza cheese to stay on the pizza? Like, oh, just use like glue to like put it on your pizza. Like those are just like kind of funny examples, but like anything where it's related to healthcare, where it's related to where it could impact people's health, where you're recommending or advising that people do things. Like there are like these, specific like AI chatbots that say like I'm a licensed therapist and I'm gonna like help you with that. Like I think there's huge, huge considerations, and I think as a society we need to figure out what do we restrict AI from doing? What do we do but like have guardrails around? And like what are the regulations? Because there's no real regulations. It's just like up to the companies.
Yeah, that's that's a lot to consider. What
Yeah.
about more, I don't know how you would phrase this, but more ethical considerations just in school. I mean, obviously you
Okay, like
this,
yeah, day to day.
yeah,
Um, I mean the easiest answer to that is in like creative arts. Like
yeah.
if you are in a digital art class or you're in a painting class or you're in something like that, and you just use an image generator and call it your own, like that's I think a huge problem because you didn't actually do anything there. Um, I think for writing it's a little bit more complicated, but I think it's the same idea in that like if you just have AI generate a whole essay for you and submit it or a paper or whatever, and you don't do anything other than that, like I think that's just as problematic. It becomes a little more gray if it's like it's revising or it's helping you brainstorm or things like that.
Hmm. And going off of that, like, what are the ownership policies on AI generated work? So if AI generates a piece of writing for you or a piece of art, does that belong to you or like the company that created the AI or the databases that it pulled from?
Well, I mean, whether like yeah, the challenge is like yes, these models were trained on other people's work. So those people should get compensated in some way for that work. And I don't, what that model looks like is not super clear. A lot of this has to do with like copyright law. It also has to do with like the licenses on these models, right? So there are what we call, proprietary models like OpenAI, Anthropic, Gemini. These are like commercial proprietary models. So if you write a book with ChatGPT or you create an artwork with, DALL-E, like they have licensing terms such that these are not like you can't make a commercial product off of their product and sell it like, or they could come after you.
Hmm.
But there's this whole other world of open source models, and there are like these open source models where you're free to create commercial products off of it.
Wow, I
And so
didn't
if you
know
use one of these open source models, like, you could create a piece of art, or you could, you know, write something, or you could even build a whole AI tool, whatever, and you could sell that, and like they can't sue you, like it's, free and open source. Um, but then it's no longer a legal matter, it's more of an ethical matter, and it comes back to like the training.
that.
But then yeah, so it's like the training, that's a copyright issue and an ownership issue. And then there's the model, like some you can, some you can't.
I did not know that some you can actually use their products commercially. That's
Yep.
new to me.
Yeah. So Meta, the what was formerly known as Facebook,
Yeah.
they have these llama models, and those are free and open source for commercial use.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. The next question is going to take a slightly different direction. At
Mhm.
which age do you think AI would start being beneficial? Generative AI
Oh
specifically.
God. That's like it makes me think of like all the little kids with iPads. Like
The Gen 11
um
iPad epidemic.
hmm, I think similar to like cell phones, I think high school is probably the right age.
Your school, like
Yeah,
start
I
of
think
freshman year or like later in high school.
uh like definitely junior, senior, sophomore maybe, like unsure about freshman. Maybe. I don't know. I think just high school in general. I just think middle school, elementary kids, like, this is just a homework cheater and like they don't understand like how these things work or what to use them for and what not to. And like
Yeah.
should be restricted from those the same way they should be restricted from social media and phones.
I think it's at high school that you start questioning the quality of ChatGPT's work, maybe on
Yes.
essays or on your advanced calculus homework.
Yeah. I mean, my favorite thing is like when I'll see, some of these like pictures of like it'll be like a middle school teacher, an elementary school teacher, and they'll like have a picture of some kid's homework. And then they'll write out like as a large language model, like I cannot it's so funny. Yeah.
It's
I
hilarious.
mean that shows you that they don't know what they're doing with it.
That's why we need an AI literacy class.
Agreed. Agreed.
Yay. Okay, last question. What would you say could be the like driving force that encourages a wider integration and application of AI tools in a professional setting?
Mm, can you explain that a little more?
Like, what pushes the integration and application of AI?
Like what gets more people using it in their day to day, in like their
Kind of
job?
like that, but like what drives more innovation of AI? Like
So what drives more innovation of the AI itself or using the AI?
of the AI itself, like more like developing AI and
Okay, so
then
like
its
what makes these
application.
things like what will continue to make these things better and more powerful?
Yeah, and like what is like what pushes people to use these models, especially in the professional setting?
Oh, I mean, I think we're already there. I think like the hype is actually dying down a little bit,
Yeah.
versus where it was like, a few months back. Um, I mean, it's an interesting space in that like what started as like what was used like more of a business to consumer technology has become adopted within the businesses and become more of a business to business technology. Like people testing Chat GPT because OpenAI made this decision. Like there were research labs around the country that they had similar technology, but they chose not to put it out in the world. The decision by Sam Altman to say, "Hey, we're going to just put this out in the world with Chat GPT," people in their day to day started using it and realizing this is actually pretty good. And so because they started using it in their day to day, then they bring it with them to work. Then they're like, oh, this is great for like writing, God forbid, a thank you note or something. Hopefully not. Um, but like that it works great for that. So now like I have this tool and I'm gonna start using it for work. Or I have this tool and now I hear it's also good for coding, so I'm going to use it for work. So like that was a contributing factor. Like the blocker, I would say, that's been overcome by a lot of companies is like, you know, I don't want to say my company's proprietary data and my trade secrets and to chat GPT, so I'm going to lock it down and prevent people from using it.
Hmm.
But that's been overcome because there's like enterprise versions of it, and there's chat like LLMs built into other like enterprise tools. So that's like been largely overcome. I think the other thing is like the industry application. So like because there was so much like hype in society about this and like a lot of news and everything about it, like every single company executive put on their company priorities like we're going to evaluate Gen AI, we're going to build something with Gen AI. We could save a whole bunch of money. We could have an industry differentiated product with Gen AI. So like there was a point in time, maybe I don't know, a year back, where like every customer I talked to, all they wanted to know is like, what are you doing? What do you have for Gen AI? Like, we need to adopt Gen AI. Like, all of our competitors are using Gen AI. Like, we need to do this as well. Like, I worked with you know, um, like a marketing technology company, and like all of our competitors have Gen AI features, and that's how they're selling their product. Like, help people find things quicker and build marketing campaigns quicker. Um, or hey, like I hear you have this coding assistant built into Databricks. Could you show me how that works? Or now I hear like their executives could just ask questions of their data with your like Databricks Genie thing. Like,
Oh,
we're so excited about this. Like, why don't you show us a demo of this? Or like, I'll be talking and getting them excited about that. So like what started as like, hey, I use ChatGPT at home. I'm going to start bringing this to work. Hey, my work shuts it down. Oh, now I could use it at work because work has a blessed version of it. Then it's become more of like every single tool in the whole world is now using like ChatGPT. Like Salesforce has like, AI capabilities. Slack has AI capabilities. Like Slack, they released some capabilities where in Slack it will like, summarize your Slack channels for you and like send you some reminders. Like Zoom has AI now, so it'll automatically transcribe and summarize, and you can ask questions about it if you pay extra for Zoom,
mm-mm.
fancy premium,
I will
whatever,
not.
Yeah, but it's like all of a sudden every company out there realizes like, hey, there's this new technology where we could offer a lot more features to our customers and make a lot more money by adding it in. And then everyone's like, oh, wow, this could make my life more productive. So companies are using a lot more of these tools, or they're just like buying like a chat GPT enterprise. So it's already there. It's growing, but not as fast and not as much hype as before.
That's really interesting. All I can think of is Instagram has AI now, which is really
Mm-hmm.
weird. I will show you later because I don't think it's like relevant to the
Yeah.
interview. But there are some pretty weird ones on there.
Yeah, I don't know that like, Meta and Snapchat are like the best, places for
There are
Gen
AI
AI.
filters on Snapchat now. The ones geared towards kids and the ones geared toward adults are so vastly different.
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah, I don't know that those are like the best applications of AI. I mean, here's an example. Have you heard about Apple Intelligence?
A little bit. I've
Okay.
like
That's
light
what
read.
I'd watch, if you're really interested in this space. Like there's two good examples of where AI at a consumer level has been poorly done and where it has been done well. Which, no offense to your mom's company and my former employer, but the bad example is Microsoft Copilot, which if you have a Windows computer, you probably see like it has Copilot everywhere, and you go into Edge and it has Copilot, and you go into Windows and it has Copilot, and you open up Word and it has Copilot, and it's just like a chat bot. And like there's some good things in that they unified it and it understands the context across all these things, but it's just a chatbot. Apple Intelligence, on the other hand, is like, let's figure out like actual things that people care about in the product, and like just have an underlying system, and then like it helps them with specific things, but
Mm.
we don't need to call it Copilot everywhere, and it doesn't need to be a chatbot everywhere. Like, let's make Siri more intelligent so it can respond to more things. Let's let you make generative AI emojis, which is questionable utility, but it's there. The coolest one is Math Notes on an iPad. Or no, I think, yeah, on an iPad you could use the Apple Pencil, and you could like write, like an equation, like a math equation. It understands that, and and you hit the equals, it gives you the result in the handwriting that you wrote it in. Like it's pretty cool.
That's really cool.
Yeah. Like
I f
that is like an example of like Apple understanding design and how people use stuff versus like Microsoft just throwing a Copilot everywhere.
Apple understanding the pain of students in calculus.
Yes, yeah. So if you got an iPad sitting at home, although it's probably they'll probably as Apple does, they're a hardware company, they'll make you buy a new one. But at least watch
Well,
their
I don't
video. It's
have
pretty
one.
cool.
I might need to get one now. We never know.
Yeah, now you might need to get an iPad.
Might
I
need
mean, they
one.
just had the new Mini 6 or 7 or whatever, and that has Apple Intelligence in it. So like, I'm not, yeah, it's your Christmas gift idea. Don't tell Echo that I
I
that I
won't.
told you you need an iPad.
I don't think I'll ever use it aside from the math functions. So,
Yeah, no, it's pretty cool though.
okay. Thank you so much for this interview.